All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to introduce for me the next speaker. He's been part of the WordPress community for the past 15, 20 years. We're not going to get into details. He's a passionate educator, a passionate technical writer, and he loves sharing his knowledge through his popular podcast, Seriously Bud, where he highlights incredible voices from the WordPress community every week. A regular speaker at WordCamps, he is also the Chief Education Officer at joyofwordpress.com.
WP, can't say WordPress.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
WP. Sorry. Joy of WP.
Yes.
Correct.
Right.
Please welcome your WordPress buddy, Bud Kraus.
Thank you, brave souls, for sticking around to 3:30. I must say, I haven't seen this many people since my bar mitzvah. Okay. So, all right, I'm going to be serious, I promise. Okay. So, hey, I want to thank Michelle, and I also want to thank all the organizers that, make this possible, because I know how much work is involved in doing this. It's crazy. Yeah, so thank you. Okay. So, I am going to talk about using low vision as my tool to help me teach WordPress. I know that sounds like a crazy title, but you'd be surprised. Anyway, here I am. I'm going to stand over here so it's a little easier for me to see this, even though I pretty much. Oh, can I? You guys can hear me, right? I project, so I don't need a microphone. Okay, so my name is Bud Kraus. I'm a WordPress content creative, whatever that is, meaning that I write technical articles for web hosts, and I also have this podcast called Seriously Bud, where I have an unexpected conversation from somebody in the WordPress community every Friday. So, or at least it comes out every Friday. Okay, so let's get a few things straight at the start. What this talk is not about. It's not a tech talk. Okay, I'm not going to go into all this stuff. I don't even know a lot of this stuff anymore. I used to be much more knowledgeable about technical accessibility. Not so much anymore. So I'm not going to be talking about alt tags and stuff like that. Okay, so what am I going to be talking about? Well, my condition, and then how I've learned from the condition to become a better teacher of WordPress. So, here's my warning. You may have seen this already. This is going to give you a little view of how I see the world. Okay, so I have so macular degeneration is the destruction of central vision. And you can see perfectly fine here. But over there, this is like black blob. Okay, my vision is not quite this bad, but that's called a scotoma, and you can see that this peripheral vision's fine, but this central vision is gone. So, of course, that's going to impact somebody from reading, recognizing faces, driving a car, probably not such a good idea, watching television. Anything that's like straight ahead is going to be a problem. But anything on the side is not a problem, and that's why people like me don't need seeing eye dogs and, canes and that kind of thing, because our mobility, I think it is. Anyway, we don't bump into things. All right, here's another view. This is more a little bit like how I see things, just like really blurry. But with the center vision, you can see just really knocked out. And here's another example. Again, my scotoma area is not as pronounced as that, I'm really happy to say. But it certainly could be that way for a lot of people. Okay, so what am I saying? Yeah, so how do they test for this kind of condition? Well, this is called the Amsler grid, and you can see that the lines are all perfectly straight. Well, you guys can see it that way. I don't see it that way. But all these squares are just perfect. And, here's your center vision, fine. And then if you start having problems, you'll get somebody will see something that looks like that. And it could be in any one of these quadrants, but, I think, anyway, and here's another where it's really bad. It's not like this for me, but you get the idea that things are real wavy, and that's a real test with the Amsler grid. Now, little AMD factoids, okay, age-related macular degeneration, a few things, and it's hard for me to see this, so I know it says there's two types. Okay, there's dry and there's wet. What does that mean? What's so funny about that?
I presume to make a point about vision challenges using the smallest font.
Yeah, good point. I mean, when I did this presentation, the font was bigger, so go figure. Because
I thought it was intentional.
No. It's there.
Yeah, I thought
No.
like, now you know how it feels.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, it's because I did this in PowerPoint and we're running this through, what you would call it, Keynote. So there. Okay. Anyway, so there's two types, wet and dry. And 90% of people who have this have the dry kind, which is much slower progression of the deterioration of your retina. In my case, of course, I have the worst kind, the wet kind, where 10% have. What happens is that you have, and this can happen quite suddenly, blood vessels, like really microscopic blood vessels, grow into your retina, and they start leaking little microscopic drops of blood, and that's not good because that destroys the retina. So, and that's a very sudden loss of vision, which is not fixable. Okay, it's not curable, or even it's manageable now, better. But in my day, when I had it first diagnosed 35 more years ago, they didn't really have a good way to deal with it. And let's see what else do. Having trouble with this point. Oops, what happened? Security. How do I? Yeah, here we go. Tech
support.
Yeah, tech support. What did I do? I pressed the wrong
I
button.
think you might have hit the wrong one. Let me see here.
This is really-
I think you're going to be back a little bit,
Okay.
but you can go forward at
All right.
least.
Yeah. All right. What do we do with it? All right. So here's some other factoids about it. I've already talked about the dry, the wet, very sudden loss of vision. But the dry can take a very long time for people to even notice this. If you have this version, the wet, you'll know right away. I mean, I didn't know right away, but I knew a problem. Somebody's asking me today, how did you know? And it was literally one day I woke up with it. And that definitely can happen. Over here, prevalence. In the United States, 20 million people, they say, have macular degeneration, which is a lot. And worldwide is 200 million, and eventually it'll be a lot more. So this is absolutely a growing condition because it is based on age. It's also based on other factors too. Gender, obesity, smoking, and my favorite, genetics. Because there's definitely a genetic strain to this. We think that my grandfather on my mother's side had this. My mother definitely had it. Although she had a condition in one eye, I have it in both. That's very different. You really have the condition if you have it in both eyes. Okay, and because if you have one good eye, and the good eye masks what the bad eye can, But anyway, so yes, I do see things literally in a different way. And so here are like basically 4 issues of things that I have to deal with. One, depth of field. So if you've ever watched me walk down steps, you'll know what I'm talking about because I can't see where steps end. I'm always like holding onto a railing because I don't want to fall down all the steps because I just don't know where the ends of the steps are. Interesting, a lot of people who are sightless, which I'm not, or even have vision impairments, what they'll do when they walk down the steps, they'll curl their toes over the edges of the steps so that they know where the step ends. But for me, it's a lot of times just holding onto a railing. Walking up steps isn't a problem, going down. Anyway, the world is very flat to me. It's very like a 2-dimensional feel to it, not 3-dimensional. Color blindness is definitely a problem. I have a hard time distinguishing between red and green, especially at stoplights, but it doesn't really matter because I don't drive anymore. Okay, this one over here, what do we have over here? Contrast is a real hard problem. If I'm inside where it's dark and then I go outside and it's light, it takes a long time for my eyes to adjust to that difference. And finally, something that other people have too for different kinds of eye conditions is what I call the prism effect. I don't know if it's technically called that. I call it that. Because my 2 eyes don't work together nicely like probably people in here, I have this sort of like split image where you're just like the 2 images just don't, the 2 parts of your eye, they don't just sync up perfectly. And so there's like this like shadow that I sort of see when I look at everything. I've sort of gotten used to it, but it would probably drive most people crazy if they saw it. All right, so how do I manage in this world? And I use 3 different techniques, especially online when I'm really speaking of this world. I Zoom a lot. I use a lot of audio. What's my last one over here? And touch. By the way, the interesting thing about touch, I think, is that you always hear people who lose vision their sense of smell gets better. I don't think that's true. At least in my case, my sense of touch got better. So everything I do, so touch to me is sort of like assistive technology, where it helps me bridge the gap of something that I can't see. And I noticed this a long time ago when I would say to my kids, let me see something, and I put my hand out. And I'd want them to put whatever it is in my hand so I could touch it. And between what I felt in my hand and what I could see with my eyes, I could put together a really good mental picture of what it is that they were showing me. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I'm still very cognizant of, touch. Okay, so we're going to play a little movie now. This movie's about 8 minutes long. It's a demonstration of what I do with my operating system to make it possible for me to do the stuff that I do. And you'll see, in my case, it's not a whole lot of stuff. And you don't have to be disabled or impaired at all to use a lot of this stuff. I happen to think, I think everybody should use this stuff if they need it. So, all right, so let's go on. Let's play this. Welcome to my world of settings and preference changes. Now, I use Ventura on a Mac OS. It's the most recent version of Mac. And I'm going to take you through some of the highlights and the key settings that I use for my computer. Now, keep in mind, everybody with some kind of impairment or disability will be using different settings. This is very idiosyncratic just for me. And that's the key, is that there are plenty of choices that are built into the operating system for a user to have at their disposal. And here are mine. So the first thing I'm going to show you is display right over here. And this is the display driver. I use a pretty low resolution, 1280 pixels by 720 pixels. And if I wanted to change the display, I would just click on that. You can see the Mac OS has quite a few different display drivers, which is good. Now, bad thing is, I believe it's with this operating system, they no longer make it easy for you to change the brightness of your screen. If I go over here, you'll see the display brightness. You can't do it through the operating system anymore. You have to do it through the monitor itself. I don't like it. Now, if I was using a Mac monitor, no problem. But what Apple is saying is we no longer give you the ability to change the brightness because there's so many different monitors out there. Do it through your monitor settings, which I'm not going to show you, but that's exactly what I did. Now, also we have accessibility settings. I think some of these settings are so important, they shouldn't even put it into accessibility. They just put it into all these other options over here. That's just my editorial comment. And I don't use everything. So, for example, I don't use VoiceOver, a way of listening to actions and functions taking place on the computer. No, I don't use that. I certainly use Zoom. And so the way I have this set is when I press the Command key and I scroll like this with my mouse, I can see this much better. I can really zoom in, and sometimes I go crazy and zoom all the way in, and you get this effect of going back and forth a lot, but at least I get the job done. Also, there is a display area in accessibility, and this is different than the display driver for the monitor. And let's just take a look over here. I'm going to actually zoom in and show you how I do this. If I wanted to invert the colors, now a lot of people like this. It's what I call the ultimate and dark mode, but I don't. But many people, as I've said, who have vision impairments will definitely use this reverse mode. The dark mode. Let's skip down a little bit over here and look at increased contrast. Well, I definitely want high contrast because it just makes things easier. If I were to turn this off, yeah, you can see. It makes it hard for me to see. So I'm going with that. Reduce transfer. Let's go down to over here, and I have display contrast. Well, very important. Again, contrast is a big deal. You can see it gets really washed out, at least for me. And I pushed it way up over here. Now, it's funny they call this normal, huh? So if I went all the way out to here, let's see what we have. Well, that's a little bit too hard for me to see. So it's just easier if I move it back to right about where it was like this. That's fine. If I scroll down a little bit more, the pointer, that is this over here, I can adjust that too. And you can see I pushed it all the way up to the largest possible size. Now I could change that, of course, make it smaller, but it really makes it hard for me to find where the pointer is. And I just found out a little bit ago that you can change the color of the pointer. That's interesting. Now I don't use this color filters option over here, so I'm going to bypass that. Let's go over here and look at spoken content. Click on that over here. Now this one I use all the time. So in addition to zooming, the other way that I understand content is to use this control right over here. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to move this out over here. And I've got this text document over here that I am writing for a post on my website about being chosen to speak at WordCamp Europe. Now, let me just show you this right over here, or you can listen to this. And I'm going to select these 3 paragraphs. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, the font's much bigger than it would normally be. And it makes it easier for me to see. And what I'll do is just press Command and B.
A couple of years ago, I was watching a live stream from Paris. It was WordCamp Europe 2017, or maybe it was WordCamp 2018 from Belgrade, or maybe WCEU coming from Berlin. Looking back, it doesn't really matter. All I thought was, wouldn't it be cool to go to WordCamp Europe one day?
Now, when I do that, you can see the visual control goes away, so I can't pause it anymore, and it just stops, which is a little bit inconvenient. Sometimes I wish there were a pause operation available. It's either just start or stop.
Yeah.
Now you might be wondering, how do I even understand what I just heard? And yes, over time I've gotten adjusted and used to hearing speech at a much faster rate than most people can understand. This also has the interesting ability to do the following. Let's just zoom in over here. I sort of use a combination of zooming and text to speech. So we've got this option over here. Oh yes, I can change the person that's speaking. But I've been with Samantha so long, I just stay with her. And
Very loyal.
for the speech rate, you can see I can change it to tortoise or hare, which is what these little symbols are, I guess. Now down over here, let me scroll. Let me push this out a little bit, because even my wife always says it's too close, too big, which makes it hard for her to see. Anyway, I'm going to go over here. Let's see. Speaking announcements, fine. This is the one I want to show you. I put this on over here.
The pointer.
So this is very interesting. So I don't use this, as you can tell.
General. Speak announcements.
So wherever.
Control center.
So that's very good.
Privacy and secure. Desktop.
Right. Now you might be wondering, well, what about like third-party applications? Will it work? I can't tell you that. It probably does, but it's certainly going to work for all Apple-based products. Now I'm going to turn this off.
Detail. Speak up.
Okay, I'll show you one other option here too. Again, this is not what I use, but just to give you a little touch of something that you probably don't know much about is
Capital H. E. O. E. Here. S. W. A. X. Y. Cap. A. X. O. 2. A. Y. 6.
okay, now what about if I wanted to hear the whole thing? I'm just going to highlight it like so.
Here's what I have to say.
All right, not bad. And that's a pretty good overview of the things that I use. Now, you notice I don't use dictation, and there's a whole lot of other things that I could use, but as I'm a very big proponent of only using the technology that you really need. And what do these technologies do? They provide alternatives for a person like me so that I can access and understand information in a way that I would not otherwise have been able to.
Okay, so one of the things, one of the things that I love about, one of the cool things I think about the assistive technology is that things that are invented for me and other people with disabilities eventually become mainstream. And I'm sure that's everything in the real world and the digital world. So like we're the first ones to get it, which is kind of nice. As I said, I don't use what I don't. If I don't need something, I don't use it. So even as I was doing that demonstration, I was learning things that the system had, the OS had built into it that I just never use. Okay, we're getting there. Actually, there'll be plenty of times for questions and answers, but I will answer all your questions right now. So no. All right. So I recognize patterns. Let me talk a little bit about teaching. So how do I? I taught at Pratt Institute and FIT for years. I taught HTML, code, CSS, design. People say to me, I don't get it. You're legally blind. How do you do this? Well, one of the reasons is that I recognize patterns. Pattern recognition is, I think, one of the lowest forms of learning. So this is how I do it. And here's an example. Like, this is an easy pattern for me to understand. It's very predictable. Open tags, close tags. This is also pretty easy for me to understand, the syntax. And this is not so easy. This is getting harder for me to understand. And this is even, so the more, creative the code can be, the harder it is for me to understand. So it's one of the reasons why I never could teach JavaScript. Okay, what about, what do I have here? What about teaching WordPress? Yes, that's what this is about, right? So, one thing I learned about going in front of a class is that I couldn't wing it. I can't wing it. I have to be really super prepared. So any class that I ever went into, I knew beginning, middle, and an end what I wanted to accomplish. Not just for the class, but for the whole course. And I think that did make me a better teacher. I know that not everybody is as prepared when they taught as I did. So I always stuck to the lesson plan and basically didn't deviate. Even though students, I think, thought I was deviating. Not really. Also, defining everything. This is a principle of accessibility, is that everything's defined so that you don't leave anything to chance and people understand as what it is that you're trying to do or say or accomplish. Now, here's another thing, too. I group related concepts, materials, and this is, if you study accessible design, grouping is definitely one of the highlights of accessibility. And so I learned that if I grouped materials and things together, it would be easier for me to teach and better. So I did that. And what else do we have here? Well, how is this? I'm really proving that I just can't do a damn thing. All right. Why? I'm just keeping my finger on this. Is there a button below here that I'm pressing by accident? Okay, here we are.
Is that the right one?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. And I also learned to have patience. So not just patience with students, but patience with myself. Because I couldn't learn as fast as other people, but I could learn better than other people. I could learn deeper than other people, but it just took longer than other people to get there. So having patience with myself is definitely something that is a byproduct of being visually impaired. And getting by with a little help from friends. In other words, when I was younger and had this condition, which is an old person's condition, I didn't want anybody to know about it. And I would never ask for help. Well, today, I'm old enough now to have this condition because I've had it for 35 years. Yeah, when you just go to the doctor's office, and everybody would be like my age today. And I'd be like 35 years old. And they'd say, but what is he doing here? Well, So anyway, so I do get by with a little help from friends. I always ask people for help if I need it. Or they just help me, which is really nice. And the way I look at it is, and I don't know why I have my little grandson. I just put it in here because I like the picture. So if you're wondering what's the connection, no. So, but I look at low vision is my own special app, and in fact, I have learned over these last few years, especially, that it's not a curse; it's a blessing. It really is. That you think like, what? Low vision is a blessing? Yeah, it in many ways it has for me become that. All right, my time is up. I have to be going. But wait, there's more. There's always more. So here's 4 reasons why I'm talking about it being a blessing. Okay, here we go. All right. You get to talk at events like this. Okay. Wait, we're not done. Hold on. Yeah, I have gotten to speak at a lot of different events because of this silly condition. Okay. So I always think, I don't want to talk about this. Yeah, but they want you to talk about it. Okay. So that's 1. 2. You don't, what is this? You don't see anybody getting old. This is really nice, okay? So like my friends, they don't have wrinkles and stuff like that. And then they tell me it's all Botox. Okay. And then, what is this one? You don't.
Junk food.
Yes, that's a good one. You don't see junk food in the grocery store.
It all looks like health food.
Yeah. So right, only health food. You don't see, it's really kind of true. You go down aisles and everything's kind of blurry, so you don't see it, you're not tempted to buy it. And then the last one here is that you are not you are, what was my last one? I forget. Oh, yeah.
You have great time parties.
Yeah, you have a great time at parties because you're not the one who's driving home. So, anyway, yeah, because you can just do whatever you want and you're like the designated whatever.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, anyway. All right. One more. Hold on. We got one more thing. I forgot. I'm sorry.
Seriously, bud?
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. Thank you. Perfect timing. I didn't pay him either. Okay, so this is why I'm doing this. No, I'm just kidding. But so if you want, you can sign up for my newsletter. Just put your camera on that thing over there, and you can sign up. And you get it once a week. It comes out. But the podcast comes out, and Mark's going to be on it too eventually. And anybody who's in the WordPress world will be on it eventually. And we have a lot of fun. It's like 40 minutes of talk, but it's not tech talk. It's people's life stories. You know, I always hear people love hearing about people's life stories and their human stories and all. That's all we do. We don't, that's my show. So, and that's my talk. So does anybody have any questions about anything about Vision and WordPress and learning and anything
You
else?
don't teach a lot of code, like
Yeah,
that was never your intention. Like just come.
in the early
use the interface, right?
No, in the early days, when I was like, more, I was a purist, right? So I was a Rage Against the Machine guy. I would never I didn't
Just sounds unreal.
I didn't even want to learn WordPress. It was like, no, I only do code. And then eventually, I learned, no, you can't think that way anymore. So I did, like in 2000 and 2001, teach code. That was all you could really do. So but I knew, I had lessons where, the class would build a project together, but we'd all build the same thing. So my material was the same thing for every class, and then they would do their own project, and then I would review their projects. But it was all code. And then over time, I started realizing, you're going to have to teach, you're going to have to learn WordPress or something else, because the code, yeah.
There's so much to teach with WordPress besides code.
Oh, for sure.
Or any of these, like Drupal.
Well, yeah, and we've gotten to the point now where somebody like me can say, I could do headless WordPress with Lovable. I mean, I think at that, I go, what?
Yeah, I can do all.
Because AI can do that. But I still had to learn a lot of the stuff so that I could, when with prompts, I could ask it a reasonably good question. I'd understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So you could ask it questions that made sense. Okay, hey guys, thank you for sticking around. I know, wait a minute. You just stayed around for the party, I know.